In this video, we're going to take a quick look at the editing tools and workflows in 3 different platforms that Warwick academics may be exposed to. So the platforms are first Moodle, then the university's own web publishing tool, Site Builder, and finally WordPress. They all take quite different approaches with different usability and accessibility issues. What you need to bear in mind here is that, so 2 things. One, there's going to be times when an academic is going to have to do a lot of this editing, and there's going to be a lot of small changes they need to make. So they will be writing content, adjusting it, viewing what it looks like iteratively. So any inefficiencies in the workflow will be amplified significantly. So every additional click that they make, they're going to have to do that click many, many, many times. And the other issue is that they may only be doing the editing maybe once or twice a year over a short period. So the interfaces have to be very intuitive. They don't want to have to do significant kind of memory work, remembering how to use an interface or having to relearn an interface between those instances, which may be separated by an entire year even, of using the system. So that's quite significant design challenges there, and getting it wrong can have pretty significant impacts on workload and stress. Okay, so let's have a look at Moodle first. This is one of my Moodle courses. And you can see I'm already signed in. So to access a course, you've got to be signed in anyway. And I've got editing teacher permissions for this. First thing is, what I'm faced with when I'm on the course homepage is this view here, which is the topics and content all laid out on one page. So we're not actually looking at content to edit yet. I can click on any of these and go straight into it, or I can do this thing, this slightly odd thing, where I have to click on the gear wheel at the top right hand corner here, tiny little gear wheel, and turn editing on. Okay, so then got all of the editing options. It looks quite different now, quite untidy, and I can click edit there. Now there isn't an option there to edit the page. There's an option to edit settings, which confuses people sometimes. So we go into edit settings for that page, and this is actually how we get at the content to edit it. But immediately we're faced with 2 separate sections here, one of which is largely unused. We have the title to the page and then a description, taking up half the screen here. And that description area is very rarely used. All the action is taking place in this box down here, which is a kind of basic WYSIWYG editor. So you can see we've got all of the formatting tools and the ability to add images and different elements. And that's pretty much a kind of standard Web 2 kind of editor. It's a tiny little box though, and it doesn't look much like how it's going to look for the students at the end of the day. I can drag that down and expand it, which gives a bit more flexibility. But the key thing to know, and a lot of people don't get this, they forget it, is that there's a button in the middle of the editing tools here. It's a bit of an odd place for it to be, called toggle full screen. If I click on that, ta-da, suddenly we've got the editor in full screen. That's a lot easier to do the editing in, although it's actually a bit wide and there's a lot of content on the screen at the same time. And it doesn't look like it will to the students at the end of the day. We haven't got any of the stuff around it. So we can do all of the editing we need to do there. Now, in terms of WYSIWYG-ness, so what you see is what you get, I can edit things on here and they appear mostly like they will when it's published, but not entirely. And there's quite a few little things that go wrong in that process. You can go into a HTML view and correct things if you know about HTML. And this is a common problem with these kinds of Web 2 editing tools, that little things will go wrong in the editing when you're in the WYSIWYG view, and you have to go into the HTML view just to get them absolutely perfect. Now, that's a bit of an advanced, most of our academics don't know anything about HTML, so fixing little issues there is something they may need to go to somebody else for help with, or they just can't fix. Okay, so I've made my edits. What do I do next? Where's the save button? Where's the publish button? It's not there. What I have to remember is that I've got to go to the toggle full screen option and click on that again to get back to this view. Okay, and then I can click save and return to course, or save and display, and finally I get to see what it's like as published. Okay, so there's a lot of clicking around, a lot of maximizing the edit window. There's a lot of looking around. If you're a novice at this, there's a lot of looking around the screen trying to find out what you need to be doing. There is also, hidden away, a whole load of other options as well in the gear wheel there, that obscure little gear wheel. And if I go back to the course homepage with editing switched on, click edit there. Lots of things you can do to reorder, reposition the page, but it's quite a complex system. Okay, so that's Moodle. Let's go on to Site Builder, the web publishing tool, which behaves very much like a traditional Web 2 web publishing tool. That is to say, we've got a website which is structured like in a tree structure. So you go to the page that you want to edit, click on the edit option. Obviously I'm logged in and I've got permissions to edit this page, and I can edit the center content. So this particular page, we've got a standard layout here with a main body of center content and a right section as well to the page as well. You can edit them separately. It is possible to have just a full width page. You can set that quite easily. So click on edit, edit center content, and I've got a WYSIWYG editor here that looks like pretty much what it's going to be like when it's published. I have to remember that I've just clicked edit center content, so I'm editing this bit here. I can't edit the right hand content at the same time. That's one limitation. But you can see there I've got this kind of standard Web 2 tools there with a few little extensions. Page audit is a handy one. That's a system that checks the accessibility of the HTML to tell me if there's anything in there that makes it inaccessible to people with sight problems, for example. So I find that on the whole, editing the HTML here is fairly straightforward and gives me the results that I want. Again, there's still, and this is common with these kinds of Web 2 tools, there's still a few cases where editing in the WYSIWYG editor just doesn't work, and I have to go to the HTML view, as with Moodle, so I can edit the raw HTML there, and those changes are updated in the WYSIWYG view immediately. But you can see that it's pretty much full screen, and it looks like it's going to look when published. And I have, there's a preview button as well, so I can get a kind of more finished view of what the page will look like to the reader. And also there's a publish. I don't have to go full screen, then go back to the smaller view and click publish. I can do that from here. So it's a much faster, there's a far fewer clicks. That publish button is much more obvious on the page. So click publish. Okay, so far fewer clicks, much more intuitive, less looking around the page trying to work out what's going on. Those little things, fewer clicks. Remember with Moodle, it was several clicks to get to the point where I'm editing full screen and then several clicks to get back to actually saving it. This is far more efficient. So it's faster and there's less repetition of clicking and looking around. Going back to that edit menu, I've got easy access to editing the right-hand side content, page properties, permissions, creating new pages underneath this one, uploading a file and statistics and other useful stuff as well. Or I can click on more and get into the full, the back end of this system and go to sub-pages and look at the structure and move stuff around, etc., rename. What you don't get, though, is a site view. You can set that up, actually. So one of the page types gives you a site view where you can see all the structure, but that's not there by default. Page history is another useful thing. So I've got access to some pretty powerful and very useful features there. So you can see that I can go back, view earlier versions and restore them quite easily. Okay, so let's go on to our third platform, and this is one that I use myself, and I think a fair number of people in the university do use for their own publishing purposes. So a lot of academics have their own websites that they publish to for the general public or for their academic communities, and they might be using WordPress for that. I think it's probably the world's most popular web publishing tool. This is my WordPress website. WordPress has changed recently and takes a different approach to editing. So let's have a look at that. So I'm logged in to WordPress here. I'm looking at one of my pages. In fact, this is a blog post. So blog posts and pages work in pretty much the same way in WordPress. I can click on Edit Post at the top, and it's going to take me to the editor. Okay. So you can see that it's not quite so WYSIWYG. Now this is the page layout that I've selected for this page is straightforward. It's just got a single column going all the way down in a linear way, but you can have more complicated page layouts. And WordPress works on the basis of what are called blocks. So I've got several blocks you can see here. That's a block. If I click on it, then there's lots of things I can do with that, including just editing it. And I haven't got that toolbar there, but I can click on this and get to the more options. Okay, so I can make changes to that. I can also add a block. Now, if I've got a more complicated page layout, there's different parts of the page I can add blocks to. But in this case, I'm just going to add, let's just give it a YouTube video, for example. So that's going to add a YouTube video directly into there. Okay. Go down to this bottom one. Just show you the different kinds of blocks there: headings, lists, images, custom HTML. Also lots of widgets, and you can extend that quite easily. So this is a very different approach to publishing, and to be honest, I'm just getting used to this now. A lot of it's very popular. Seems to be a fairly fast way of creating content. Finally, just to point out, the update button is there on the top right hand corner, which I'm not going to do because I'll just get rid of that. There's a preview as well, and gear wheel shows and hides all of those extra settings. Okay, so it's a fairly straightforward, fairly slick editing process, but one I'm just getting used to. And this is a kind of approach that's actually becoming much more popular with web publishing tools now. Okay, so 3 different systems, all work in very different ways. Probably for me, Site Builder is the most efficient, simple, obvious, that has the lowest extraneous cognitive load. So the amount of thinking I have to do about the interface is very minimal, and it's really fast. That's partly to do with being so familiar with it, but it is a slicker, simpler system. WordPress, the new WordPress approach, not entirely sure about. I'm kind of getting it now. You can see as I was trying to do things there, it's still not really bedded in, but I haven't used it that much yet. But what we have to remember is, for ordinary users who are coming and using these things sporadically, but sometimes quite intensively, writing content, doing a lot of changes, then you need the slickest, fastest, least clicking approach possible. That's probably Site Builder out of these tools.